Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we are doing some repotting. So if you feel like it, you can repot with me. Pause this video right now, get yourself an orchid to repot. And for today, what I will repot is a Tolumnia. It's a Tolumnia that I have never showed you in bloom because this is the first time it's blooming. And I'll give you close-ups. This is wonderful. This is Tolumnia Fantasy, and I don't know why, I've always had the impression that it was a pink or purple Tolumnia. I don't know why, Fantasy, the name kind of suggests magenta, something. No, it's a yellow Tolumnia and it has a very wonderful and unique shape to the flower. No fragrance, but the flower looks wonderful. Now, I feel like I have this one for quite a while, but the tag says June 2023. I really don't know. Maybe it's just 2 years old in my collection. Anyway, it needs repotting. It is potted in the self-watering pot, which has served me well in the past 2 years. However, looks can be deceiving, and this pot is actually this big, and this orchid is just, no. She's kind of big at this point. She needs more room, and I'm just going to use one of these opaque pots. I don't know if I purchased this or it came with another plant, but it's gonna be perfect for her. I had an idea, by the way. I was thinking, Birdie is screaming in the background. Enjoy her screams. So I had an idea. How about I find some carnivorous plants, some Drosera's or Pingiculas, but I think Drosera's are better suited, and I actually pot them in these guys. Birdie. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you can hear her. My goodness. She's really scaring the neighbors. She's okay, she's playing, probably screaming at a toy. Right, so I think some carnivorous plants will look very well in these pots. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. Anyway, let's just start the repot, shall we? And before actually we go into it, I don't know if you read the community tab or the post tab. I know many of you don't. The gardening content has moved to a different channel. I'll link it to it down below. I named that channel Lady Butterfly. I don't know why. All of my gardening content, the roses and everything will be on that channel from now on. And I will keep this one just for orchids because that content was just not doing good here, and everything that does not do good kind of like spoils the algorithm and everything. So I moved it there. If you'd like to watch my gardening content, just check the description. I'll link you to that channel down below. Anyway, let's get back to work. Let's unpot this little Tolumnia. I have some roots here at the bottom. Even if some of these roots will not make it, it's okay. Most of the roots are contained inside. And, oh, I can actually press a little on it. I was thinking that yeah, I would lose a few roots because this is not very flexible. It's still not as flexible as this one, like look at this one. But I could still press it a little and detach whatever little roots I had. So now I'm just gonna try to grab this orchid like somewhere at the base and pull up. It's actually coming right up. Yeah, I have a root being trapped here. Let's see if I can, oh, I can save it. Oh, look at that. I am going to save this little root. There we are. Perfect. Now, before you ask me if it's okay to repot orchids while they're in bloom, generally speaking, there is a chance they will lose the blooms, but if you don't stress them out too much, they might actually keep the blooms. I'm okay if I lose like the blooms prematurely on this Tolumnia because I've had her in bloom for a while. I enjoyed her quite a lot. The flower spike, it's not really as short as, or it shouldn't be as short as it is. Flower spike should be probably this high, but it got trapped in the leaves, so it's okay. It's not the most grand flower spike of life, right? It's the first time this orchid blooms, so even if the blooms end up just dropping prematurely, I'm okay with that. I kind of just want this orchid to be in a new pot and just stay more hydrated, because that's the issue. When an orchid kind of overflows or fills the pot, it's not gonna suffer. It's not like a terrestrial plant. It's still gonna feel just fine. It's just going to dry up much, much faster because we have many more roots, and at some point, especially if you have bark chips or another loose type of medium, it's just pretty much going to throw the medium outside of the pot. So that's the only problem. And of course, if you don't keep up with the watering, your plant will suffer. So it's not for your own good only, it's for the orchid's good as well in the end, because you are what keeps it alive. And I always think you, first and foremost, should have an easy life maintaining an orchid, and, you know, afterwards, the orchid will feel fine. You know, don't put the orchid in front or on top of everything, and don't make too many sacrifices for it, because it's just not sustainable. It's not good for the orchid or for you either. And we're using orchids to unwind, right? And to detach and make us feel good, not make us feel stressed that we didn't water them. Right, so I'm going to gently remove the sphagnum moss from the roots. Moss doesn't really attach to roots like bark does, so I'm actually not damaging any roots here. I could use a little pair of tweezers, but I have it downstairs and I'm a little lazy, so I will do with my fingers. But I usually prefer the tweezers because it's just thinner and I can get into, you know, all the little spaces. But I'll just take my time like this now. And as you can see, in the span of 2 years, I do have a little bit of algae. I don't know if this is cyano or algae. I have some things forming because this, even if it's an opaque pot, it's white. So white light can still pass through a little bit, but it's not excessive. Definitely if I would have had a transparent pot, it would have been much worse. So it's okay. Righty. So the bark is almost inexistent. I kind of removed all of the bark. There are a few pieces that are kind of in there, but I don't want to damage the orchid too much, and it's okay. Like a few pieces of bark, old bark remaining in there, it's okay. Yeah, I'm pretty good with what I have here. I actually don't really see many dead roots, and whatever I saw dead, I kind of just pulled it off. So yeah, there's really not much for me to do. I'm just gonna keep the orchid as it is. What I will, however, do is remove all of these sheaths. These are old leaves that, you know, remain on the orchid. It's a good idea to remove these because I find not only can they hide pests or harbor pests, but in time they do start to break down. They become more flaky and they kind of just pile up here in the middle of the orchid. And as you water, because they're very close to the root system, they're gonna start to drag the water from the root system, become soggy, start to break down right in the center of the orchid, and that's not good. Because it's still, you know, a contained space. It's not like in the garden. It's gonna remain here. It's gonna degrade to some point, but not really that fast and not really that well. And it's gonna be a hazard pretty much for the orchid. It's gonna promote some stem rot because it's gonna be very, very wet at all times there. So I'm just going to remove these sheaths as much as I can. There are some, very few again, that are just stuck in here, and I will probably break the new growth if I go after them. So I'm just gonna let them be. There is old growth of this orchid. This one I could remove. Do you see? This is a very, very, very old growth. Oh, it's so windy outside. Do you hear? They're announcing some rain today as well, some storms. I hope so. It didn't rain since January or something, and my garden could use some good watering. Anyway, so this is a very, very, very old growth here that I'm tempted to just remove. And I just pulled a little on it, and there it is. I wanted to say there you go. There it is, very old growth, does not have good roots. I hope you can tell they're just papery. And these sort of things, you know, just like with any other orchid, old growths, you can absolutely remove. They're not serving the orchid quite at all anymore. It's just, you know, two little leaves. Compared to a bush of orchid, it's not going to provide much nutrients. The roots are dead. It's not even contributing to hydrating the orchid, and you're just going to have dead roots in the pot, right? So oldest growth, I tend to always kind of remove. There is another very old growth here. I might still keep this one. It's not that old. Okay, I'm gonna keep that one. It's just, you know, there's no right or wrong. Just remove whatever feels very, very, very old on orchids. And particularly with the sympodials that have pseudobulbs, make sure you always leave at least 3 pseudobulbs on your orchid. Don't remove like all of them and leave 1 or 2. that's not gonna end up well. These are sympodials, by the way, as well. They have a rhizome, and instead of pseudobulbs, they have these fans. So they're not like phalaenopsis, they're not actually monopodials. They act in the same way as oncidiums, let's say. And fun fact, they used to be called, like a long time ago, I do believe, equitant oncidiums. They were called oncidiums because the flowers are very similar to oncidiums. Do you see? They're not actually oncidiums, they have their own genus now, but they are indeed sympodials. Alrighty, there we are. I just see a few more dead roots here, not many at all. We are good. This orchid is very, very healthy. And actually, I think the leaves on this particular hybrid are very thick. Very, very thick, very, very, very sturdy. I cannot even bend them to any degree, actually. So sometimes it does happen that the flower spikes, if they're not sturdy enough, they will do this little crinkle here. They will get stuck in the leaves. And it happens to many orchids, not just Tolumnias. But being that this is the first time it blooms and the flower spike probably was not as vigorous as I know Tolumnias can be after a few years, it probably just did not have the strength to puncture the leaf properly. So it punctured it when already it was like accumulating here. So yeah. Oh my gosh, it's such a thick-leaved Tolumnia on this one. Right, so this pot will fit the existing roots perfectly and will also leave some space for new roots to develop. Where is the wick? There we go. I am always reusing the wicks. I give them a good wash with some dish soap and I reuse them. I'm gonna go again for the same type of medium. I will start with sphagnum moss at the bottom, and if you missed my previous repot, I'm starting to enjoy working with the moss dry. I got used to it, but initially it will be very annoying. It's much more easy to work with it damp, it's much more tame. However, I find, now after so many years, I find that working with it dry, one, doesn't require me to go pre-soak my moss because I don't store it wet. It's gonna accumulate stuff and it's gonna go bad. So after I like soak it from the brick and make it malleable, I just let it dry and I store it dry. It's much better for the long-term, well-being of the moss. So in the past I used to dampen it, but now I find that working with it dry saves me time and also creates very nice air pockets. It's impossible to compress this moss while it's dry. It has such a different consistency when it's dry. However much you press on it, you will not be able to compact it. So in the end, my mixtures become infinitely more airy and fluffy. And that's what I want. And it's somehow more homogeneous. Not homogeneous, homogeneous. Okay, homogen is the word in Romanian, it's a Latin word. So I think it's Latin. Is it Greek? Could be. I think it's Latin though. Anyway, so I find that all of these little bits and pieces, do you see all of these crumbs just falling? That goes like in between the bark pieces, and it doesn't clog the air pockets, but it makes everything even more homogeneous and just, I don't have layering like at all, 0% layering. I started to love working with the moss dry like this. So give it a go. If you've been working with it wet, try dry. See if it's good for you. If it's annoying, I get it. It's kind of annoying because it kind of goes everywhere, but it's kind of nice as well. Right, so because this orchid has some growths in the back as well, which is nice, I want everything to be like equally bushy. Usually you get growth only in one direction, but we have growth in the back as well. I'm going to center it, so I'm not gonna press like the old part of the orchid against the side like this, like I usually do, because I see this growth wants to do this business, which is good. I encourage this, so I'm gonna like center it. I started with a layer of sphagnum moss. Now I'm going to add a layer of bark, and I'm going to make it fall down in place with a bamboo skewer, which is one of my favorite tools with working with orchids. It can be a stake, it can be a potting helper. It's great. All right. Now I'm gonna add a little bit more sphagnum moss, and yes, it's a bit annoying, but you can press a little on it because you're not gonna compact it too much. and you can just manipulate it a little better into, you know, going into the places you want. Even after more than 12 years, I still have revelations and discover things. Dry moss, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Listen, sometimes being a little lazy has paid off in dividends. I cannot even tell you. Don't you ever get those instances when you have to do something, but for whatever reason it doesn't feel right to do it right then and there. You're like, I'm gonna put it off because I just don't know. I just can't. I don't want to do it. And then you do it at a later date and it's actually much better because, I don't know, the universe. It happens to me like so much. I've started to embrace my laziness sometimes. And this is one of those instances. I could just not be bothered to pre-soak my moss every time I worked with it. No. And what happened? I discovered that I prefer working with it dry. I'm kidding. But it's true what I said. It just sometimes happens that, you know, I'm like, oh, thank goodness I was lazy. This is much better. Anyway, right. So the last layer of moss goes next. And of course, the last layer of medium will be bark. But on this layer of moss, I will actually add a little bit of slow release fertilizer. This orchid did not have any slow release fertilizer in this medium. As you saw, I just relied on the water soluble one, the MSU, and it did great. But at this point, it is big enough and mature enough and has enough roots to actually benefit from my slow release fertilizer. So I'm going to add a few beads. You see what I'm saying? All of this like residue, I can just put it here and it's still gonna be fluffy. Even when I water it, it's not gonna become compacted or mushy. It's still okay. I have actually been doing this thing for a while now. It's not just like a month or two ago I started not to wet my moss. It's been going on for a year or more. So yeah, a few beads of slow release. There we are. Just a pinch. I don't usually like measure my fertilizer unless, you know, I dissolve it in water. But this, I just use a pinch and just dump it in there and it's probably gonna be fine. Righty, and the last layer will be bark. And this will make sure that I will not have excessive algae or cyanobacteria forming on top, which tends to form a lot in my environment. I don't know why. Some environments are just not as prone as mine. That's the beauty of things. We all have different environments, different climates, and just the slightest different parameter can make a lot of difference. It's like the butterfly effect, you know? Butterfly effect, apart from being an awesome movie, if you didn't see it, you should see it. It's kind of old at this point, I feel like, but it's still very, very good. The butterfly effect, apart from being a good movie, it's also, I believe, a theory that says that a butterfly flapping his wings on one side of the earth can determine a hurricane on the other side of the earth. It's not necessarily true, but it is true that certain things can snowball, obviously, or can determine other things to happen. Whether so dramatically, I don't know, I don't think so. But where was I going with this idea, I wonder now? Oh, I was talking about environments, I remember. So yeah, every little change can determine bigger effects. So just the different humidity in one's environment will determine things working differently. Potting mixes be tweaked differently, having other effects on the orchids that they have in my environment and so on. So yeah, you get the idea. Alrighty, here we are. My orchid is watered and she is good to go for hopefully another 2 years, maybe even more. The medium that it was in, it wasn't super broken down, but it was just time for this orchid to get unpotted. I literally watered them 2 days ago and it was already almost dry and summer didn't even start yet. So it was definitely time to repot it. Even if we did remove all of the potting mix, I don't think we created so much like shock to the roots as for the flowers to fade away faster. But just so you know, whenever you're repotting something in bloom, there is always a chance you're gonna lose the flowers. If you can wait, wait. If you don't care, do it, repot. And if you can repot safely, if you're confident, just do it again. It's trial and error. This is how you build experience. This is how you see how your orchids react for you. And pretty much this is how you learn, by just doing things. Right, so with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this repotting session. Let me know if you repotted anything. What did you repot today? More repots are coming, you guys. Oh my goodness. I just need time. Right, so stay tuned for more repotting. And with that said, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye.